All right. So, welcome to 90s night. Have you guys ever seen Ratatouille? Anybody seen Ratatouille? Show of hands. Who's seen Ratatouille? So Ratatouille is Rebecca, my wife's favorite sick day movie. So when she's feeling sick and she's staying at home, she watches Ratatouille, and every time. But do you guys know like that first scene where one of those first scenes, not the first scene, one of the first scenes where Remy is in the chef's hat and controlling him while he's cooking like the first time, and he's like out of control and throwing things everywhere. He's like having to take charge, and it's crazy, right? I would show you the clip, but then we wouldn't be able to watch it again on YouTube because we would be taken down, the service would. But many times we feel like, maybe you've not been in the exact situation as Remy, because where you're standing on someone's head, pulling their hair and controlling them. But how many of you have actually been in charge at some point in your life? In charge, yeah. Maybe you were in charge when your teacher needed to go outside and do something else, and she said, "Hey, you're in charge. Take names." You guys, anybody done that one? None of your teachers trust you enough. Got it. Maybe you were put in charge when, number one, your teacher shouldn't leave you in the room alone. But, okay, moving on. Maybe you were put in charge when one of your parents had to run out of the house real quick and, like, you're put in charge over all your siblings if you're the oldest. No? Some of you guys? Okay. Maybe you were in charge of the class hamster. I don't know if you guys had class hamsters and you got to take it home for the weekend and you got to be in charge. No? No? Okay. But okay, so when I was growing up, freshman year of high school, I was put in charge of teaching our preschool kids at church, little preschool kids, entrusted with little freshman Donnie. Think about you yourself as a freshman. Some of you guys are right there. Some of you guys don't know what I'm talking about yet. But I was put in charge of like taking care of our preschool kids at church, and we had like 7 preschool kids. I had an assistant who was a lot older than me, but I was put in charge, and I would have to teach them the lesson. I would have to do the crafts with them. I would have to take them to the playground and play games with them. And it was like crazy that they trusted somebody so young to be in charge. And many times I was like, why am I doing this? But if I wouldn't have done that point, been in charge in that moment in my life, I wouldn't have realized that what God was doing in my life and preparing me to do. And I loved being in charge then. And honestly, I love now when I get to be in charge. And I don't know about you, but being in charge comes with lots of responsibilities. And if you're anything like me, sometimes you would admit that you love being in charge of someone or someone else or something. And you don't always love when someone else is in charge of you or has the authority over you, right? That's exactly what we're talking about today, though. Authority simply means that someone has the power or the right to be in charge of someone or something. Again, authority is when someone has the power or the right to be in charge of someone or something. And so whenever you have the authority, it means you have the ability to make the decisions. It means you have the ability to influence people, to set the rules, to set the boundaries, or use the power of influence to influence someone to do something else. That's what authority is. And when someone has the authority over you, it means that they have the ability to do that in a way that directly affects you, right? And so why are we talking about this? Why are we talking about this? Well, because the truth is, authority is something that each one of us is going to deal with at some point in our lives. We're either going to be in authority or someone's going to be in authority over us at some point in our lives, always. And so it's something that if we get our heads wrapped around it, right now it's going to be so important. And that's why we hope that by challenging how we think about authority now, that we'll be able to better deal with it in the future. Maybe some of us, having listened to authority, might not seem like that big a deal. Like you have a coach and you listen to your coach all the time, and you'd rather have that coach in authority over you. Or you have teachers, and you love that you have a teacher or a parent that is in charge of you from time to time. We like the authority figures in our lives. Some of us like it. Our parents or our guardians, they're awesome. We love our teachers and we love our coaches. We love our leaders at church, and they're the best. And so even though we might not always be happy with the things that they tell us or the things that they say to us, we know that they are looking out for the best in us, and we trust those people. We respect them, and they're easy authority figures for us to follow. But others of us, having someone in charge of us is hard. It's hard because and whenever we hear about someone being in charge of us the rest of our lives, we freak out. And I understand why. Because you struggle with authority. I've been there, and I still have moments that it's hard to struggle with that authority as well. We all have so many reasons why it's hard for us to deal with the authority figures in our lives. And I think one of the main reasons is this. We don't always trust the people in charge. We don't always trust the people in charge. We haven't had the best authority figures in our lives, and that makes the thought of being under an authority figure in our life scary. When they ask us to do things we know aren't right. When we see them do things we know aren't right. When they treat us unfairly based on our age or where we live or the color of our skin. When they hurt or threaten or abandon or abuse us. That's when having someone in charge of us, someone in authority over us, really hurts us and doesn't feel so great. And maybe you totally get this right now because you're dealing with this very thing right now. Your relationship with authority is a complicated thing. And it's messy because people and authority figures can be complicated and messy. Maybe you have a teacher who doesn't grade everyone fairly. One of the athletes, they always get the best grades because they're the coach of the team. And so no matter what, you're not going to get as good a grade as the other athletes. Or maybe you have a cousin who watches movies or things online in front of you and it makes you uncomfortable or it breaks the rules in your house. Maybe you have a coach who's just really mean. They scream at you, they call you names, they belittle you, they make you feel like less. And so you have a distrust for authority. Or maybe for you, the issues with authority are even deeper. Maybe you struggle with police officers because you've seen how they treat people. You know you're supposed to listen and follow the rules, but they don't always seem like they're using the same set of rules, and they're not always using their authority the right way. Or maybe you have a sibling who's told you to keep it secret, but it's something that you know is harmful to them, and they're abusing themselves, they're drinking, they're doing drugs, and it's harm that you know can be dangerous. And how are you supposed to be? They're older than you, and they're leading you. How are you supposed to tell them that they're wrong? Or maybe you've had a leader at your church that told you how the way that you're supposed to live and how you're supposed to act, and then you see them outside of church and you realize they're not acting anything like what they tell you to act. And so you see all of these things and all of these authority figures, and you just don't know how you can deal with authority. Before we go on, let me say this. If you're in a relationship that you are being hurt or abused by, whether that's mentally, emotionally, or physically, this is a safe space. When you're in group, let someone know because we want to help you. We want you to be in a safe space. We want you to not have to fear for the authority figures in your life. We want you to speak up so that we can help you. And don't feel like it'll be held against you or that everything's going to change. what we want you to do is to get in a safe place so that you can be a happy and healthy person. And so I want to encourage you, open up in group or talk to one of your small group leaders on the side so that they can help you to be in a healthy and safe place. No matter what your relationship with authority is, though, is now, the reality is that at some point in our lives, we are all going to have to deal with authority figures. And we're going to all find ourselves dealing with some great people in charge and some not so great people in charge. And this is because, and this leads us to ask ourselves this question: what do we do when we have to deal with bad authority? And the great thing is that there's many people in history who've had to deal with bad authority, and one of those is David. Today we're going to talk about David. David was a long time ago for us, and David eventually was anointed king of Israel, or whenever he was a kid, was anointed king of Israel, and he had to decide with an authority figure in his life who wasn't always great what he was going to do. You see, like I said, David was picked to be the next king of Israel. But there was one problem. There was a current king of Israel named Saul. And Saul had authority over David. And Saul didn't want to give his throne up to David. In fact, Saul wanted to stay king so bad that he tried to kill David multiple times. And so when David found out that Saul was trying to kill him, he literally ran. And he ran away and he was hiding. And that's where we're going to pick things up. See, King Saul had been leading his army all the way around the countryside, chasing where he thought David was. And one day, David and his men who had been running away hid in a cave. And they hid in a cave, and pretty soon, Saul and his army were walking by that exact cave whenever Saul had the urge to go to the bathroom. Let's just leave it at that. He had the urge to go to the bathroom. And David's men, while Saul was relieving himself, had encouraged David to take that opportunity to end Saul, to take control and kill Saul. Let's be honest, kill Saul. And Saul had been an awful authority in David's life. And now David finally had the chance to do something about it. But look at what David said in 1 Samuel 24:4. It says, David crept forward and cut off a piece of Saul's robe. Stop. This isn't how it's supposed to go down, is it? Saul is in a compromising position. He's using the bathroom. And David walks up and has the opportunity to take him out, to end it, to kill the guy who was trying to kill him and to be over. But he let Saul go. Saul literally left the cave without even knowing that David was in there. But what does David do next? After Saul gets out of the cave, David goes and runs out of the cave and catches Saul and tells him what went on. And he shows him the piece of garment that he had cut off of Saul's the garment, his robe. He shows him the piece of it. And he was showing Saul that David had spared his life. And this is how David explained it. He said, "May the Lord judge between us. Perhaps the Lord will punish you for what you are trying to do to me, but I will never harm you. As the old proverb says, from evil people come evil deeds. So you can be sure I will never harm you. May the Lord therefore judge which of us is right and punish the guilty one. He is my advocate, and he will rescue me from your power." See, David could have took Saul down. He could have killed him, and if we're being honest, he probably had good reason to do it. But David realized that even though Saul was powerful, David had more power of his own. He had the power to choose to be honorable. And I love how he responded in this moment. David quoted what he had heard growing up. He says, "From evil people come evil deeds." So he's basically saying, I'm not going to be the evil one and be part of the evil people. King Saul, you may be like that, but that's not me. Saul, you may be a killer, but David would not be. Saul may have been disrespectful, but David would not stoop to his level. Saul may have been wrong and evil and deserving of dishonor, but David knew that in honoring Saul, David was ultimately honoring God. And the same goes for you and me. The same goes for you and me. We can't choose what the actual authority figures in our lives do. We can't affect exactly what they do, but we can honor God by honoring them and by choosing the best actions and responses to those authority figures in our lives. We can choose to be honorable no matter what's going on around us. Their actions, no matter who they is, don't have to determine our responses. Does that mean that we always obey, we always comply, we always give in? We don't have to be weak, no. David ran for his life. If he had obeyed everything that Saul had told him to do, then David would have been dead because Saul would have killed him. He wouldn't have become the person he was running down. You can always choose to be honorable. I know that's easier said than done, choosing to take the honorable route. And it's not going to be simple, but it's possible to be honorable even when the authority figures in our lives aren't acting at all like themselves. You can always choose to be honorable. But honoring someone doesn't mean that we obey everything they say or agree with them or worship them. Honoring bad authority means choosing to be honorable in how we respond to them. And here's how we can do that. First, think about what you say and how you say it. Think about what you say and how you say it. How do you talk to the authority figures in your life? And how that authority matters in your life. Don't raise your voice. Don't get mean. Don't call them names. Instead, choose your words wisely. You're talking both when you're talking both to and about the authority in your life. Choose your words wisely. It's okay to speak up when you feel like you've been wronged, misunderstood, or when you're being disrespected. But as you speak up, remember to do it with respect. Second, remember they're human too. Remember they're human too. Our authority figures aren't perfect. You're not perfect. They're not going to be perfect all the time either. Even the good people who are in authority over us are going to mess up sometimes. And sometimes they just need the grace that you've been given. And so give them grace as well. Instead of shutting down or blowing up when that happen, when they go at you, instead we can choose to honor them by giving them a chance to right their wrong or do better the next time. After all, we want that from people too, right? And finally, do what's safe for you. Do what's safe for you. Some of you might be in a situation where the person in charge of it, the authority figure, where the person is harmful or dangerous to you. If that's you, I want to say sorry that you've been put in that situation. But do what's safe for you. Speak up about it. Just because they're in charge of you or they're in the authority of you, it doesn't mean that they can do those things to you, that they can be harmful to you. And sometimes the safest thing you can do is to just get help. So speak up about it. And so being honorable to them may just be getting help for yourself and for them. So if you're listening right now and you feel like you need to speak up about something, I want to encourage you again to pull your small group leader aside and talk to them about it so that they can help you. They want to be honorable and do the safe thing for you. Remember, you can always choose to be honorable. You can always choose to be honorable. And while it might not be the easiest choice, sometimes it's the right thing to do. And the good thing is that you're in small groups so that you can talk about what it means in your life, in the situations that you're in, so that you can choose and learn how to handle it in a group as well. And it's a safe place to talk about it and to talk about how you can honor the authority in your lives. As you guys break off into group, I want you to think about this one question. What's one way you can choose to be honorable to someone in charge?